the author of this book, His Lordship Bishop Winston Fernando, Emeritus Bishop of Bahul and Emeritus President of the Bishops' Conference of Sri Lanka. Your Lordship Bishop 𝗩𝗜𝗦𝗧𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓 dear Reverend Fathers, Reverend Sisters, Reverend Brothers, and my dear friends. When Jesus Christ told his disciples, "Euntes docete omnes gentes," go and teach all nations. The task of being teachers to the world was entrusted by him to his disciples. And truly to that commitment they were faithful, and they went all over the world preaching, educating, transforming and converting people to live a life that is pleasing to God. Because every single human person, every single child that we receive on earth is a gift of God. Every single person we meet on the road, every single person who walks with us, talks with us, who is asking for help, who is coming to us, is a special creation of God. And what Jesus wanted us to do was to allow this person to let what God wanted from this person to shine out. Education is that. Wholesome education is not only imparting knowledge or educating the youth on moral values, but there is a vocation that perhaps even the child does not know, but it is there. It is hidden from his eyes. Pope Francis, in his apostolic exhortation, Gaudete et Exsultate on holiness, says that God has a plan for every single human person. We must try to help this single human person to come to know what that plan is, therefore to work it out with God in harmony and to live his life fully. This is education. It is not enough just to have a school or a library or classrooms. The teacher is one who has a very noble character. Noble character in forming, polishing, allowing God's beautiful intention for this child to come out, helping that child to discover that intention. Actually, the church, therefore, for many centuries, continued to engage itself in education. And they had their ups and downs. The very first schools or places of education were the monasteries that were founded by the Benedictine fathers, mostly all over the European continent. We see great saints being mentioned as people who were monks and who lived their life fully and who imparted education on the people. Therefore, after the barbarians invaded the Roman Empire and destroyed everything, they didn't know how to govern it. They needed somebody to guide them, because it is not enough to occupy and take over, but you have to now run the show. So they had to turn to the Catholic Church. That is why from the very early stages, the Pope and the Catholic Church has been called Magister Europae. That means teacher of Europe, the Church. Therefore, over the centuries this came, but of course with the figures like Immanuel Kant and immanentism, as well as enlightenment, the philosophy of enlightenment coming in, man wanted to be without God. He didn't like rules and regulations or calls and various things. He saw that in a negative way as a restriction on his freedom. And therefore began all the revolutions that came after that, including and ending up in the Marxist revolution in some of the East European and Russia, in Russia. Therefore, they visualize life as just a class togetherness. So everybody must follow the same thing. No individual freedom, no individual shining out, no individual serving society. Everybody must follow the political philosophy of the state. That is how in Russia they almost drilled into the people a kind of regimented type of life. Even the children. You can see that happening. And then we see, I have seen an article by Mr. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, famous, Nobel Prize winner for literature, for his book Gulag Archipelago. In that book, in a poem that he wrote, he says, the problem with today's humanity is that it has forgotten God. That's the article heading, Men Have Forgotten God. And he says all the brutal assassinations that took place in the 20th century, in the 1900s, we think of Adolf Hitler, we think of Lenin, all the murders that they committed, all because they wanted to live their life without spirituality, without an inner life. Our being, our human nature is not just only what we see in the external form, but what is inside us is more important for us than what we see in our internal form, external form. Therefore, when many years ago I became friends with Mrs. Bandaranaike, and I asked her one day, Madam, what do you think about the school's takeover? She told me it was a mistake. This is exactly the words that she said. So you see, even the person who wanted the schools to be taken over, due to the influence of the materialistic thinking, of the socialist materialistic thinking of society in Eastern Europe and other places who were influencing our country that time, the choice was made that religious schools will be taken. That's how 1960 the schools takeover took place. And I, for one, I was one of those little boys. I must have been 12 years old, not more than that. We went with black bands and we were asked to come to the parliament, the old parliament area, and to demonstrate. So we all went with our books to the school, kept the books in the desk, and we went to fort to that particular in front of that building. We all sat on the grass. Then the police came and chased us with horseback and tear gas and all. We all ran and entered the lake house. That time lake house was belonging to the 𝗩𝗜𝗦𝗬𝗧. So when the police tried to throw us out of the lake house, 𝗩𝗦𝗬𝗧 came and said, no, these boys and girls are at our invitation. So you can't do that. So they had to retreat. And we were there for 3 days. And we were shouting slogans against Mrs. Bandaranaike. Because that was the time of this socialization, the Marxist orientation coming into this country in a very strong way. Where are the Marxists today? I mean, all this Marxism that they were advocating in Russia is gone. In 1989, the statue of Lenin was brought down in a very, very serious act of hate and disregard by same people, same Russians. So you see, man cannot be reduced to material matter. Man has that interior principle of spirituality, and God has placed inside his or her heart a vocation, a call to nobility. We have to, education is to help the child. Every single child is like a beautiful flower given to us. We are not worthy of every single child that is given to us, and this child is innocent, completely innocent. He or she learns all the bad things from either the parents and the relatives and the neighbors and the school and everywhere, society. But this beautiful child has a beautiful vocation which is inside his or her soul. And what must education do? Education must assist this child. Education has no right to take that away from the child. The state does not own the people. That is why we are saying this today. See, the politicization of all our structures today, including the judiciary, is politicized, highly politicized. So much so that the President, he tells that he has decided to extend the office of the Attorney General because they are in a discussion with the Bishops' Conference. He was making use of the Bishops' Conference to try to give a justification to an unjust act. That's it. We don't accept that. We are not in a regimental society. Now they are sending kites, kites to be sent to see whether a referendum can be held and the same lot of hated politicians can continue to rule this country for another 2 or 3 years. Absolutely unacceptable. We have our constitution. Constitution gives a term of office to the president as 5 years, and then at the end of the 5 years, they must go for a franchise. That is our right as citizens. The state cannot take that right away from us. As much as the state cannot take the dignity of a child from that child, similarly the state cannot take the freedom, the dignity, and all the manifestations of that freedom and dignity from us. It cannot take it. Therefore, we must rise up if such stupid things are being proposed by our leaders to say a firm no to that kind of attitude. We have had enough. We want to be able to choose our leaders in a free franchise. That is our right, and we want it. That is why I say human dignity is something that is absolutely important. Every single person must be respected, fostered, and allowed to grow to his or her full stature. That is education. So I congratulate His Lordship Bishop Maxwell Silva for this as mentioned also by Bishop Winston Fernando, for this very erudite and very deeply researched book. I know that you are the expert on education in the Bishops' Conference. So every time we start talking about schools, we look at him. And then he will say something from his own experience.